This is Heather Vickery with the Brave Files podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 301, The Prestige Movie Review. I'm Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. This week, it was over to Derek to nominate a movie for us to watch and review. He went with the 2006 Christopher Nolan film, The Prestige, starring Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. We're going to get to the movie review in just a minute, but first, Derek, any pop culture that you've been able to partake in and share with us this week, my friend?
Yeah, just a little bit, actually. I've had a pretty busy week, and we up here in Canada are getting colder and colder as the autumn approaches, and we had to close our swimming pool this week. So
it's a sad time when that happens.
Yeah, it was very sad. That's the official end of summer in my house. We had a big blowout party on the Saturday night, had a great time, and then Monday we closed the pool. So I didn't have a lot of time in preparation for the party, and then obviously the party I didn't have time to do much. But I did have a chance to watch a couple things on television, and I watched a documentary. So let me tell you about the TV first. So
sure.
As we've talked about before, I love game shows. And they don't really have very good new game shows, in my opinion. But one of the things that I have started to really latch onto are cooking game shows.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. You could
argue that they're not, quote, game shows in the traditional sense, but they are. They're competition shows, yeah. And so one of the shows that I watch pretty regularly is Guy's Grocery Games, the Triple G. Okay. And they're doing a little tournament right now using a format that they've used before on special occasions, where normally you just bring in a bunch of chefs, you give them some wacky whammy ingredients, and you have them make, wings and fries or something. Like, you just give them some standard, your best burger or something. But what they do with this one is they bring in teams of 3 chefs, and they're usually celebrity chefs, usually. And so they bring in 2 teams of 3. And what they do is they're going to have 30 minutes to make whatever, but they divide them into teams where it's a relay. Each one can only do 10 minutes worth of the stuff. And the people that come second and third don't know what the instructions are. So the first person is told, you need to make X. You need to use these whammy ingredients, and here are the other restrictions, and then run around the grocery store and get all your ingredients. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, you need to leave visual clues for the next guy who comes in so they know what to keep making. And then the third guy comes in, same thing, has no idea what they're supposed to make, but hopefully you've set them up for success. And then at the end, the judges base the food on a number of categories, but one of the things they get judged on pretty strongly is how close did they actually hit the mark. So like one of the ones they did in a previous one is they had to have a vegetarian dish, and when the third person came in, they tasted and went, this is kind of bland, and they added beef stock. Not a vegetarian dish anymore, so they ended up losing because of that. So it's these little things that can set you off, and it's just fun to see the craziness that happens and how they interpret the way certain food has been prepared and left. And it's this added level of gamesmanship on top of the cooking component. And so what they're doing now in Triple G is they're doing a little tournament where they brought in 6 teams of 3, so 18 competitors, and they're doing a little round robin. So the episode, they're actually a new episode dropped tonight. I haven't had a chance to watch yet, but the one tonight is the semifinals. And so I had the last few episodes on my PVR, so I had a chance to watch those. My wife and I watched them, and it's great. So I mean, if you like cooking shows and you like game shows and you're not already watching Guys Grocery Games, you got to try and find the one where it's this, I think it's called the relay competition. It's fantastic. It's so much fun. So check that out. And then I had a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Nice. What'd you watch?
All right. Well, it's kind of a cheat. So it's a multi-part documentary, and I only had time to watch the first one. So it's about the Canadian music band The Tragically Hip. It's called The Tragically Hip, No Dress Rehearsal, which is a lift of one of their lyrics from one of their more popular songs.
I've heard a lot about this. Everyone's talking about this documentary.
It's 4 1-hour episodes. Obviously, as fans of the band and anyone who's Canadian who knows their pop culture, the lead singer of The Tragically Hip, Gord Downie, died a few years ago from brain cancer. And so watching this documentary is interesting because they have so much footage over the years of the band, so they can actually show you a lot of stuff that involves Gord Downie, even though he's obviously no longer with us. And then they obviously cut back to the other members of the band, the here, now, and today, to talk about it, and they're like, comment on this and comment on, as any good documentary will do. And it's been really good. I mean, whether you're a fan of the band or not, they're an important part of Canadian pop culture through the 80s, 90s, 2000s. They're most of their biggest songs, their biggest hits, reference Canadian history, Canadian geography, Canadian politics, because that's just the kind of songs that they tend to write. And so they have a special place in the heart of a lot of Canadians, including myself. So I had a chance to sit down and watch the first episode today, and it was fantastic. Blew my socks off. And I sort of made a mental note to myself that I'm only going to watch one episode per day, because I think if I just sat down and watched it all, I wouldn't be able to appreciate it as much. So I watched the first one a day, and then I'm planning to watch the next 3 episodes over the next 3 days. But yeah, it's available on Amazon Prime here in Canada. It's called Tragically Hip, No Dress Rehearsal. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about it, at least based on the first episode. First episode is 10 out of 10. So yeah.
I've heard a lot of people talking about it, and I'm just going to go on the record. I know people will hate me for it, but I'm not a fan of the Tragically Hip.
Yeah, I knew that.
And it's weird. They're Canadian, and they sing all about Canada and stuff. I don't know. To me, they always just sounded like kind of like a bar band. I don't know. I never got into them, so it just wasn't my thing. So I mentioned last week, Derek, it was my birthday, and I got to go to the Hamilton Comic-Con. Now, just to clarify for our American listeners, that's Hamilton, Ontario. Unfortunately, the Comic-Con wasn't in Hamilton, Bermuda.
No.
Although that might have been much nicer, which means no offense, of course, to the good people of Hamilton, Ontario. Just Bermuda would be nice.
I don't think your wife would let you go all the way to Bermuda by yourself, though.
Well, she might have, because the highlight of the Comic-Con was the celebrity panel of Curtis Armstrong, Donald Gibb, and Robert Carradine, better known to most Gen Xers as Booger, Ogre, and Lewis from 1984's Revenge of the Nerds. It was awesome. Oh man, I was in Gen X nerd heaven, dude. It was great. And it was a smaller Comic-Con, so it was more intimate. I got a chance to talk to all 3 of them. I think they were surprised, actually, at how much I was into some of the other stuff that they've done, not just Revenge of the Nerds, because everybody was there to talk to them about Revenge of the Nerds. So I was talking with Curtis Armstrong first, and I was mentioning One Crazy Summer, because he was Ack in that movie. And I told him how I just let my 11-year-old son watch that movie. And he's like, oh my God, that movie's so good for kids. I'm like, I know. So we were just talking about that. And then Donald Gibb, who was Ogre, I was telling him how much I liked him in Amazon Women on the Moon, because he was in the Video Pirates sketch in that. And then Robert Carradine was the best, because they were doing the Q&A. I was right in the front row. And I think somebody asked him, they said, like, what's it like to transition from Revenge of the Nerds into Lizzie McGuire's dad? Because she was a younger person, and she was like, I know you as Lizzie McGuire's dad. Like, what was it like to transition into that? And then he was talking about it. I said, actually, I have a question. I said, I'd like to know, just kind of piggybacking on that question, what was it like to transition from your earlier work into Revenge of the Nerds? Because his earlier work, Robert Carradine is like one hell of a good actor. And in 1981, he did a movie up here in Canada called Heartaches. And it's directed by Don Shebib. And it also had Margot Kidder in it. And Robert Carradine was amazing. So he actually was nominated for a Genie Award, which is basically like a Canadian Oscar. And so I was talking to him about, that movie. And I said, like, and his background too, like his pedigree as a Carradine. I was like, dude, you have some like really serious acting chops. So I want to know what it's like going from his earlier work with all these heavy acting, roles into Revenge of the Nerds. And his answer was so cool because he's like, I'm nothing like Louis Skolnick. He's like, I'm nothing like that character in the Revenge of the Nerds. He's like, I got long hair, I drive a motorcycle, I play guitar, I smoke dope. He's like, so doing that role required a lot of acting for me. So he's like, I've always been very proud of that role because, it required a lot. And then Donald Gibb chimes in. He's like, and he's got this big like voice, like ogre, right? And he's got the voice. He's like, don't tell him he's a good actor. He's going to get a big head. You say that to me. I'm a good actor. So it was great. The guys were amazing. Donald Gibb was so friendly, like just an amazing, great guy. One interesting thing that Ogre said was because he was talking about how he worked on the movie Bloodsport. And he said that he would never work with Jean-Claude Van Damme ever again. He said Jean-Claude Van Damme was a total So I was like, wow, that was interesting. And the other thing that struck me too was Curtis Armstrong, Booger, is a very serious person. Like it kind of struck me. He's a very, very serious human being because he's so funny in his movies. You know what I mean? So it struck me. But anyway, I had a wonderful, wonderful time and a wonderful birthday. So it was awesome. And I got this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
I figured since we're doing The Prestige this week, which is about magicians, that maybe I could do a magician joke for you.
Okay.
All right.
Wait, are you going to magically make it humorous and funny?
We shall see if I can wave my wand.
Abracadabra, baby.
If it was like a Jedi trick, I could like wave my, you will laugh at all my jokes, you know. Okay. Okay, so Derek, did you know that I once saw a magician make a stick of butter disappear?
No, I didn't.
It wasn't a great trick, but it was better than nothing. See, you get it? It was butter than nothing.
Yeah, good trick. You put the audience to sleep.
Do you play a musical instrument?
A buddy of mine that I play Dungeons & Dragons with.
I play guitar.
The veil of professionalism has been pulled back.
Is that a special kind of guitar?
I don't always do as much homework for this podcast as I should.
Hey, get off my car.
I think you're going to be assaulted if you keep telling those jokes.
And he's got to go in disguise as a woman.
You are crazy.
All right, Derek. So this week it was your turn to pick a movie for us to watch and review. And you went with the 2006 Christopher Nolan film, The Prestige. So maybe you can start us off with a bit of an explanation about why you wanted me to watch this movie and why you thought it would be good review here on the podcast.
Sure. So first reason was I have a list of like maybe 5 or 6 movies that are sort of from around that early 2000s area, because I find that we don't always hit the late 90s, early 2000s that often. So I'm trying to make a more conscious effort of doing that. Plus, I know most of the movies in that era you haven't seen, so they're going to be new.
This is true. Yes.
And honestly, a lot of them I haven't seen since they came out. So it's a good opportunity for me to go back and revisit, and The Prestige just definitely fell into that category.
Hard to believe that was almost like 20 years ago.
It's been almost 20 years, yeah. Now, at the same time, I'm trying to look for movies
I still think 20 years ago was 1984.
Yeah, no kidding.
No.
And again, I'm trying to find movies that are like, that were critically acclaimed when they came out, but maybe weren't the number one at the box office. But also movies that maybe aren't the number one thing on people's radars right now, but when you say like, hey, you should go revisit this, they're like, you know what, that maybe I should. That's probably a good call. The other reason I did it was I recently listened to a podcast where they were talking about the movie The Sixth Sense, and they were talking all about like movies where you have like, you know, a big reveal at the end, or it's a mystery, and then but all the clues are there, and then it almost like you want to go back and watch it a second time once you know the reveal, so that you can see like, are the clues really there? And if I had known, would I have picked up on it? And I hadn't seen The Prestige in a long time, but I knew how it ended. That part I remembered, so I knew coming back to it now, because it had been at least 15 years since I saw it last. Even though I knew the reveal, I wanted to watch it again and sort of see how much I was picking up on knowing the outcome versus how much was like just faith of the audience that, yeah, sure, okay, fine. One thing I didn't realize until I was just doing the homework for this podcast is that the movie is actually based on a book. So that I find that, generally that helps. If a book is a really popular book, that it's popular for a reason, and then hopefully the movie follows it pretty closely. We recently reviewed Logan on this podcast, which obviously also stars Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. I probably watch Batman at least every 6 months, so he's constantly on the TV in my house. So again, it was a interesting opportunity to go back and watch something with these two performers who I see in a lot of other things pretty regularly, but I haven't seen them together in this one in quite some time. That was sort of all the little pieces coming together. And plus, honestly, I know that a lot of the times I give you movies to watch and you don't really dig them. So I'm trying to find, I want to say a better class of movie, but I want to find just straight up better movies, more films than movies. So this one to me sort of falls in that film category. You've got a good director, good source material, good performers, and it's this mystery all along. So for all those reasons, I asked you to watch it. And let me tell you, I watched it this week and I forgot how good it is, how much I enjoyed it, and how much more I enjoyed it this time, knowing how it was going to end. I think I liked it even more having that curtain pulled back before watching it this time through. So that being said, what was your experience like?
So I thought it was okay. I'll admit, when I was first watching it, like I'm getting through the movie and I'm thinking, hey, this is actually pretty good, but I think for me though, that it got a little bit lost with the subplot, and I felt like it kind of collapsed under its own weight in the third act. But we'll get into that in a minute. We'll do a deep dive on it and I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit. But I just want to go back to something you mentioned, because, you said there's this, big reveal at the end. And then in a movie like The Sixth Sense, I was the same way as you. When I watched The Sixth Sense, the first thing that came to my mind at the end of that film was, I want to go back and watch it all over and look for the clues. Like, wow. I did not get that sense in this film. I just did not feel that. I guess I can see where you're coming from. I didn't feel the same way. But anyway,
no, let me stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
This one, I think you're right. I don't necessarily want to go back and watch it again right away like I did with The Sixth Sense. But I knew that when I watched the first time, I thought, I'm looking forward to rewatching it at some future point, knowing the end.
Right.
So again, I didn't think you were going to watch and go, let's rewind and give it another 2 hours.
But I don't even have the desire to go back and watch it again to pick it all up. I'm like, no, I got it all. We're good. But we usually talk about the box office. So this film was released on October the 20th, 2006 in the United States. It was released 3 weeks later in the UK. It was made on a budget of $40 million. It made $52 million at the domestic US box office. It ended up taking over $109 million worldwide. So its $52 million box office was good enough for 59th place that year. It's just above The Lake House, whatever the hell that is. And
Keanu Reeves?
I don't know. And just below Charlotte's Web. They made a live action version of the book. It'll always be the animated movie from 1973 for me, of course.
Oh, for sure.
Go figure.
Well, it'll be the book as well, but yeah.
Yeah, well, the book is so good. I read it to my son when he was younger, and I was like crying reading it to him. I'm such a softie.
Everybody cries when they read it. If you don't cry when you read Charlotte's Web, you are heartless.
It's so good about friendship. I just love it. So any guesses as to the box office champ from 2006, Derek? The number one film that year, almost
Marvel. It had to have been a franchise, probably a Harry Potter movie.
The number one film that year almost doubled the second place movie's box office take.
Or was it a Disney? Like, was it a Disney cartoon? Like maybe The Incredibles or something? Or no, that would have been earlier. I'm going to stick with a Harry Potter. I think it was a Harry Potter movie. Sequel for sure.
It was a sequel. It was Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. $423 million. Yeah. Second place was Cars with $244 million. Oh, so then top X-Men: Last Stand, The Da Vinci Code. Yeah. The Da Vinci Code sucked. Superman Returns, Ice Age Meltdown at number 6, Happy Feet 7, Over the Hedge 8, Casino Royale 9, and Talladega Nights. The Ballad of Ricky Bobby was number 10 at the bottom. Animated movies, sequels, and reboots. What a shock And you wonder why I stopped watching movies after 1989. This is why, Derek. This is why. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the cast. So we'll start with Hugh Jackman, obviously. You mentioned you had me watch Logan recently, also starring Hugh Jackman. Mm-hmm. And that was really only one of a few things I'd ever seen him in. Like I did mention on that show, I think, that I'd seen him in a movie called Prisoners when I was on a long cross-country flight, and it was really good. So now I've seen Hugh Jackman in 3 movies. I will say he's a pretty solid actor. He's pretty good. Now, he was also in a movie called The Greatest Showman, and I think that's where I was getting confused as I was going into this movie. I had never seen The Prestige or The Greatest Showman, and the marketing for both, I think, for me, was kind of similar, or at least I had that impression, like that they're both like period pieces about like Hugh Jackman as a magician or a showman, or at least on stage or something. So I was a little confused going into it, but Hugh Jackman is not just commercially successful, but critically acclaimed as an actor. He was nominated for an Oscar, Best Actor for Les Miserables, or as we say in English, The Miserables. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that translates like that or not. I don't know. I'm just guessing. He won a golden. Yeah, he won a Golden Globe in 2001 for Kate and Leopold. Won a Tony Award in 2004, and then the year after that, he hosted the Tony Awards and won an Emmy Award for his job hosting the Tonys. So, there you go. You know, he's pretty good, right? So I will say also, I watched this movie by myself, and let me tell you, my wife was pretty unhappy when she found out that I was watching it, because apparently she thinks Hugh Jackman is hot.
Okay.
So I guess, you know, he's a hot guy. I hear he's like a super nice guy in real life. Apparently,
I've heard that too.
Very good to work with.
I want to believe that, because he seems like the kind of guy that I'd be disappointed if I found out he was a
Yeah. And I mean, like, the cast and crew always are saying good things about him, and he seems to genuinely like his fans, which is the complete opposite of his co-star, Christian Bale. By all accounts, a very accomplished actor, and also a bona fide
he's
notoriously
he seems to be the opposite of Hugh Jackman.
Exactly. Everybody says he's hard to work with. The cast and crew have always said he's a I remember he yelled at a stagehand once for like walking in the background, just and he's a jerk to his fans. I think his next movie should just be titled one thing about him, he just seems to just love like fully immersing himself into his roles. In 2004, he was in a film called The Machinist, and he lost 62 pounds for that movie. Yeah. And then he bulked up all this muscle for Batman Begins, and then he gained a ton of weight, like fat, to play Dick Cheney. Maybe next, I think he should just like give this all up and just play himself and just star in the movie. But anyway, my feelings about him aside, what do you think of Christian Bale, Derek? Especially as it pertains to this film, obviously.
I mean, just based on what I see on screen, I think he's great. I think he does a good job. And like you said, he's definitely one of those like super intense performers. Whether or not that makes him a better performer, I don't know. But, you know, I liked him in this. You know, I think the only movie he's done where I thought like, meh, you know, he was just okay was that Terminator sequel. And even that, I think, and that was the one where he had that like meltdown that got captured on audio and stuff.
That's when he was yelling at the stage.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
But it's like, again, he's made a lot of interesting choices and played a lot of interesting roles. There was the one, I think it was just called The Fighter, the one where he won an Oscar. And again, that's one where he was like super skinny. He was really good in Vice as Dick Cheney, as you had mentioned. You know, The Prisoners, another one you mentioned, he's really good. Like, it's rare that I see a movie that's got Christian Bale and I sort of come out and go, wasn't my favorite. Or if I had a problem with the movie, it's not usually him.
Mm-hmm. And so you thought he was good in this film as well?
I thought he was fantastic in this film, yeah. Especially when you find out, again, we're going to spoil this movie. If you're listening and you haven't, you're like, when you find out that he's playing both roles, and again, because I knew that when I was watching it the second time through, there are subtle differences when he's playing one brother or the other, like as the younger person. I mean, when he's covered in the old man makeup with the fat suit and stuff, like, who cares? But like where the wife keeps saying, like, do you love me today? Like, so, you know, those represent the different days when he is and isn't which one of the two brothers. And it's like, there are, again, small. You watch it, and it's like, again, in his mind, I'm sure he has it down to a science where he's like, this brother does this brother does that, but it has to be so insignificant.
Because the one smiled a lot more, and the other one didn't. Was more like dour, and one was Christian Bale, and one was his alter ego, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, by all accounts, he's a good actor. No two ways about it. I also want to mention Michael Caine. So he has 177 acting credits on IMDb. Wow. So it got me thinking. I was like, what actor has the most credits in history? So I started like kind of digging into this a little bit. So Christopher Lee, the great Christopher Lee, has 289 credits on IMDb.
Now, hang on. Let me stop you before you continue. The thing with IMDb is they'll often give you a credit for your voice work and for appearing on a talk show to promote your movie.
So I just looked under acting. For that.
Well, and those will often both show up under your acting. So, and again, so some of the newer performers, the numbers might seem a little higher. But for someone like Christopher Lee, that's probably all TV and movie.
And I take into account other things, which I'll get to here in a second, because also James Hong, James Hong, he was in Everything Everywhere All at Once, Big Trouble in Little China, 461 acting credits. Eric Roberts, of all people, has 730 credits.
Wow.
But according to the Guinness Book of World Records, the actor with the most career credits, now this includes stage, screen, and television, okay? With over 3,000 acting credits, Jan Layton is his name. He's an American actor, and he has played a little bit of everything everywhere. And he will always hold a dear spot in my heart because he was Albert Einstein in Zapped. Remember the Scott Bale, Willie Ames comedy?
Einstein, help me!
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, he has the record for the most acting credits. So anyway, I was interested. But anyway, back to Michael Caine here, because
Michael Caine.
I love how this guy has done everything from Oscar-winning roles to absolute garbage. Like, he's done it all. So he was nominated for an Oscar 6 times. Okay. So in 2003, he was nominated.
He won for Cider House Rules, right? Is that the only one he won? Yeah.
So he won. No, he's won twice. So he was nominated in 2003 for lead actor in The Quiet American. Didn't win. In 2000, he won for The Cider House Rules. Best Actor in a Supporting Role. And in 1987, he won Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Hannah and Her Sisters.
Yeah.
And funny enough, he could not be there to accept the award. Sigourney Weaver accepted the award for him because he was on site because of production of Jaws: The Revenge.
Oh, that was just on TV yesterday.
Yeah, and it was so funny when that movie came out, years later, they asked about it, and he was like, "I've never seen it. And by all accounts, it's terrible. However, I've seen the house that it built, and it's terrific."
Yeah.
So he was never shy about doing stuff for money. He was also nominated in 1984 for lead actor in Educating Rita. He was great in that movie. In 1973, lead actor in Sleuth. And in 1967, lead actor in Alfie.
Right.
But he won twice. So this guy has he's done it all. He's done it all. And he's even been in Austin Powers Gold member and stuff. Like he's done so much stuff.
Seems like he got a pretty good sense of humor. There was a bit on I think it was Jimmy Fallon where he does the Wheel of Impressions, and he'll have a guest come on, and like a lot of performers can do a lot of impressions. Michael Caine's one that a lot of performers can do. True. And so he's
so distinct,
Yeah, and so if you go on YouTube, you type like Jimmy Fallon Wheel of Impressions, there's some really good best of clips, and there's one again. And you're going back for this one with Kevin Spacey before all the Kevin Spacey stuff, where they have Kevin Spacey on there and they're having him do the Wheel of Impressions, and it's one of the funniest bits I've ever seen. And one of the ones that comes up is Michael Caine, and then so he's like, okay, so imagine Kevin Spacey doing Michael Caine, and he's like, Michael Caine, and he's like, give me a Michael Caine, and he goes.
Kevin Spacey was a very good impressionist.
He was very good impressionist.
Yes.
So he said, again, I'm not going to do it not very good justice because I'm not an impressionist, but he would say, so in the Michael Caine, he goes, they asked me, Michael Caine, how do you pick your movies? He says, they give me the script. If my name's on the first page, my name's on the last page, I do the movie.
So there you go. That's quite the impression.
So it always makes me laugh every time we watch it. So anytime a movie's on TV and Michael Caine's on it, my wife and I both start going, Michael Caine, because at the start of the impression, that's what Kevin Spacey does. He says the name a few times, and we just sort of both do it to each other. We crack up, and we don't do it justice, but we just think it's the funniest little inside joke. But anyway, look up that Jimmy Fallon Wheel of Impressions.
I will.
Find the Kevin Spacey one. He does a Bill Clinton one doing, I don't even want to ruin it. He does Bill Clinton and Michael Caine are the two that I remember that are just priceless.
I remember him doing impressions on Saturday Night Live of like different actors trying out for Star Wars or something like that. Yeah, it was really good. So, okay, Scarlett Johansson. Want to mention her. Again, I'm going to take flack for my take on the Tragically Hip earlier. I'm going to take some flack here too. It's fine. It's what I do. I don't get what the big deal is with Scarlett Johansson. So
yeah, I also have not been a huge fan. I'm sort of a Johnny come lately. I personally feel that her more recent performances are far superior to her earlier work, as is often the case as someone matures and gains more experience. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's beautiful, but yeah, I honestly totally forgot she was in this movie, and when I'm watching it, I thought, she was just okay.
Anyone could have played this.
That was what I thought too. Yeah. I'm like,
she was just okay for me.
Any young beautiful woman could play this role, and maybe it's just because I thought Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale were just both so strong when they were on the screen. Maybe anyone who was put up against them was going to seem, a little less bright by comparison, as far as their, the power they bring to the role. But yeah.
And a lot of people are like, a lot of people are like you too. Like, she's the most beautiful woman in the world. I don't get it. Huh? Really? I don't know. I don't think she's all that great of an actress. I mean, I would disagree with you a bit. I think her earlier stuff, like, I thought she was pretty good in Lost in Translation. You had me watch that here for the podcast.
Yeah.
I thought she was pretty good in that. I mean, but she's been nominated for 2 Oscars. Like, interestingly, she was nominated for 2 Oscars, both in the same year.
In the same year, yeah.
2020, she was nominated for Best Actress for Marriage Story and Best Supporting Actress for Jojo Rabbit.
She was fantastic in both of those films.
But
have you seen either one of them?
No. And I watched part of Marriage Story. My wife and I were like, well, we heard about it. It was like streaming. Went right to the streamers or something like that.
Yep.
So I was like, I heard this is really good. Let's watch it. It was so friggin' boring. And I mean, Adam Driver's another one. I don't really get it.
Yeah, him I don't get.
I just don't get it all. I don't know. I thought it was dumb. But like I say, in this movie, I felt like anyone could play this part. I didn't feel the same way about Hugh Jackman's character, Michael Caine's character, or Christian Bale's character. They all were properly cast, but her, I was like, anyone could have done this. Like, I don't know. I just don't know. I want to mention Andy Serkis as well. So this might sound crazy. And again, you got to remember, I'm a sheltered guy. I only watch old stuff. I'm not up on the new stuff. I didn't even know that he was an actual actor, like appearing in films as himself. Like
he was in the Black Panther. We watched that like 2 months ago.
Oh yeah, that's right. You had me watch that. I don't know if I remember him being in that, but I know him as the motion capture guy.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I didn't know this guy does
between the
real roles.
Between the Lord of the Rings and the Planet of the Apes, that's like where he's done his best work, like as the motion capture guy.
So, to keep up with the spirit of things, I had to look him up on IMDb. 110 roles. I mean, wow. he's no Michael Caine, but I mean, that's pretty impressive. But a lot of Marvel movies, it looks like, does he do motion capture acting in the MCU? Like, you mentioned Black Panther, but what about the other stuff? He's always himself?
I don't think so. I think the character he plays in the Marvel has always been he himself. No makeup, none of that. But he was in a what was it? I'm just looking him up now. He was in. There was a British TV series called Luther, starring Idris Elba, where he's like this rogue cop, and they did like a one-off special last year in 2023, and Andy Serkis was like the main villain. So I'm like, I knew I just saw him in something recently. Yeah, and he was Alfred in the new reboot of the Batman. That's right.
Oh, so there you go. Okay, I want to mention Roger Rees. So his character in this movie was Owens. I don't know. He was like the go-between from Christian Bale and the mysterious rich guy.
From Cheers.
That's exactly it. I recognized him right away. That's Robin Colcord from Cheers.
Remember, Colcord, that's it.
Yeah, he was dating Kirstie Alley. He was a total scumbag on that show. But so I just wanted to mention him because I saw him. I'm like, hey, I know that guy from Cheers. But maybe the actor in this movie that stood out the most, and we're talking about some great actors here. You know who stood out to me was David Bowie. I mean, I know he's done a little bit of acting over the years. Like he was in Labyrinth and The Man Who Fell to Earth and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, and The Hunger too. But
Cat People.
Mostly no. Well, the Cat People, he only did the music.
I thought he was in that one.
No,
too,
that was Malcolm McDowell. So
got it.
David Bowie's known for music and singing, but I thought he was actually outstanding in this movie.
Yeah,
when he came on screen playing Tesla, I thought, oh God, give me a break. This is going to be like a major distraction. You know, it's David Bowie playing this part. Not at all. He was really good, and it's too bad because he plays this part so well. But this is the one part of the movie that I could have totally cut out. So let me explain. Let's get into this a little bit. So my take on this movie overall is that it's a decent period piece about magicians at the turn of the century. 1900, okay. That is, obviously.
Yep.
And there's this rivalry, right? This craving for fame and money and power. And I think the movie would have been way better without all that Nikola Tesla sci-fi contraption crap. It added like 45 minutes to the movie that wasn't needed. Why couldn't it have just been a period piece about magicians? They each use a different technique for the prestige of the transported man.
But that was the whole thing, is the only way that the one guy could get the one up on the other guy was to literally find a way to get transported. Because there was no other way that he could do it better than the way that Christian Bale was already doing it.
That's fine, but it was like dumb. And it was like, I don't know. Anyway, before we get in, I think we should break down the premise because this is important to keep in my mind. Because early in the movie, Michael Caine describes the format for doing a magic trick. I guess every good magic trick needs to follow this format. So number one, there's the pledge, where you show someone something that's normal, an everyday item. Like a perfect example is like a woman and a box.
Yep.
And then the turn, where you do something extraordinary. So like you cut the woman in half. And then there's the prestige, the third part, when you bring the thing back. You know, you put the box back together and, you know, voila, she's back in one piece. So the concept of this movie is, how in the hell does a magician move from one spot to another in a matter of seconds? Because the pledge is you see one man, the turn he disappears, and the prestige reappears somewhere else.
Right.
And of course, it's simple. Christian Bale has a twin brother. They each do half the trick. So I guess the one question I have is, I wonder if Christian Bale's twin brother is a too. I don't know, probably. I don't know. So anyway, Hugh Jackman, like you said, he's obsessed with finding out, like, how do I do this? So he enlists Nikola Tesla to build him a machine that uses electricity to create a clone of himself. I'm like, come on. Like, that was the dumbest part of this movie. He tried hiring an actor that looked just like him. That didn't work, right? But why not leave it at that? Like, why not leave it at that? Like, then he discovers Christian Bale has a twin. It was super simple all along. Go figure. So maybe, like, Hugh Jackman, I don't know, goes nuts and tries to kill him, but they have this whole stupid subplot of this cloning device that it would never exist in 1900. This is where the movie lost
it wasn't. But remember, it wasn't an intent to make a duplicate of himself. The intent was to literally teleport himself somewhere else. But the duplication was sort of like an unexpected side effect, and that's what created the additional problem of, well, there can't be two of you. And so you see through the flashback, the very first time when he does it, he has a loaded gun there. And when he comes out of the machine, he sees a double. He's like, bang, shoots him. And that's the whole thing that ends up happening throughout the movie then when he does his engagement and he's got the trap door and the one guy drowns in the water. Like, that's because he can't have two of himself living. And apparently in the book, there was a whole thing. I was reading this in the notes. In the book, when the duplicate was created, it was sort of like the soul was sort of split in two. And so both halves were suffering in different ways for not being a whole until one of them was killed, and then the survivor would, you know, be whole again. But they didn't want to get into that in the movie. It was just sort of we don't want two guys. Okay. But remember, Hugh Jackman didn't find out that Christian Bale had a twin until like right at the end of the movie. Right? Like, he didn't know any of that until the very, very end. Even though Michael Caine, through the entire movie, when Hugh Jackman kept asking him, how does he do it? How does he do it? Michael Caine, he's got a double. He's got a double. And he's like, no, it can't be that simple. He's got a double. That's how I would do it.
I know. And that was what I thought the whole time, too, that Michael Caine is right. Like, he's right. That's how he's doing this. Duh. But the other thing about these clones, like you mentioned, they have to be killed after every show. So they drown them in a tank of water. Yep. But do they get rid of the bodies? No. They just keep a warehouse full of all these tank after tank of water with a corpse in it. Remember, they showed it? So stupid.
Yeah. But again, the idea was they were going to do exactly 100 shows. And then my assumption was at the end of the 100 shows, they'd figure out a way to get rid of the bodies.
But they just keep building these tanks and, like, where's this money coming from? Like, I don't know. The whole thing was stupid, I think. I think it would have been better if they just stuck to the plot and none of that Tesla clone machine junk. Like, a movie about the tricks of the trade of magicians back in 1900 is kind of a cool idea. You know? How'd they pull off these tricks without any technology or CGI? It's just sleight of hand, misdirection. That's it. You know?
But again, that I think you might be missing it, though. But that's... So, like, when Hugh Jackman's character goes to Tesla, he goes there because he believes that Christian Bale is using some scientific method to literally transport himself from point A to point B. He still doesn't believe there's a duplicate. When he goes to Tesla, and again, Tesla's like, you know, doesn't explicitly say, I made a teleportation machine for him, but that's what Hugh Jackman's character believes he hears. That's what he gets out of the conversation. So he says, okay, well, I need you to build one for me too. And so that's why he's there, is he's trying to track down how Christian Bale does the trick. He genuinely believes that Tesla built him a scientific teleportation machine. It's no longer magic, it's science. That's why it goes down that road.
I don't know. I just thought this whole thing about cloning people was dumb. But anyway, so that brings me to the director, Christopher Nolan. I'm also going to take some flack for this, but I mean, who cares at this point? I'm not a huge fan of Christopher Nolan. I think I've mentioned that before.
I believe you have mentioned that before.
I know he's hailed like this super great director, like, you know, oh, he's one of the greatest directors ever. I just don't get it, some of it. I mean, he's done some good movies, but I think most of his stuff, I find it's too long and kind of boring.
I was just about to say, let me guess, you don't like his movies because you feel they're too long.
Yes, I do.
I think it's just you have a short attention span.
Maybe. I mean, on this podcast, we have done a few of his films. We did Memento, which I actually thought was pretty good. We did The Dark Knight, and that was okay. But that was more of like a typical Hollywood big budget movie kind of thing.
For sure.
But we did Interstellar here on the podcast. I don't know was that you that suggested it?
No, that was a Yancey movie.
Yancey?
I would have, but I love that movie, but I know you probably didn't like that.
Yeah, like everybody seems to think that's a masterpiece, but I just don't get it. It's this dystopian future movie. You know how much I love those. But I just felt it was just too long and boring. Interstellar, I don't know. I just don't get it. My wife and I went to the theater a few years ago to see Dunkirk.
Okay.
And we don't get out much. So when we do, I'm always hoping it's worthwhile. Well, it wasn't, because that movie sucked. And then you had me watch this movie this week. Like, it was okay. But then that whole cloning subplot just ruined it for me. So anyway, I feel like they could have whittled like 45 minutes off this movie, and it would have been so much better.
I will caution you then. You should never, ever try to watch the movie Tenet.
Yeah, I can imagine. I never would.
It was like it messes with your brain. I had to watch it twice before I was really even starting to get it. It's all over the place. So now, did you ever see Inception?
No, I haven't. So tell me, what's the big deal with Christopher Nolan? Like Inception, I've heard is some people have said, oh, it's just a masterpiece, and I'm skeptical because like I've seen some of his other movies and I think they're dumb.
I think for me, I find that he tends to take on heavier material that's going to take a long time. Like I think a lot of film creators want short movies because they're just straight in it for the dollars. If I can make my movie 90 minutes, it can get shown in the theater more times per day. I can get more money off of the box office. And the studios love that. And that's why most comedies are only 90 minutes. So they can run them over and over and over again. With someone like Christopher Nolan, like it's clear that he's, once he sort of built up a little bit of a reputation and proved that he could make, decent movies and good performers wanted to work with him, he started to make longer movies that were telling bigger stories, often adapted from heavy books. And for me, those are the movies I tend to enjoy the most. But to your point, they're not necessarily the ones I'm going to run back and watch 20 times. Like, I watched Oppenheimer earlier this year. I saw it once. That's enough for me. I don't think that's one I ever need to watch it again. But Interstellar, I've probably seen 6 or 7 times. The Batman movies, I've seen a ton of times. Memento, geez, that's another one with sort of the you got to watch all the way through to sort of see what's going on with the surprise ending sort of thing. So that one I've seen a bunch of times as well. Like, I just find his movies enjoyable because I find he tends to have a big cast full of very strong performers doing really great things, and he tends to do like a lot of sci-fi stuff, which I like too. So that's just me.
Okay, let's talk about a couple scenes in the movie. I want to mention the hanging scene, because Christian Bale's wife hangs herself.
Yes.
That part. We'll start with that one. And then,
okay.
She's married to Christian Bale, so, I mean, can you blame her, I guess? But it reminded me of something when I was watching that. This whole notion of hanging creeps me out. Like, it creeps me out more than almost anything in the world. It always has. I mean, because it's creepy, I guess. But I remember I read In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and the criminals are sentenced to death by hanging, and he describes it in the novel very, very much in depth. I don't think I slept for a week after reading that book. I was so creeped out about it. So the scene when the wife hangs herself, I was just like creeped out again. I don't know. There's just something that puts you, the whole thing just gives me the willies. Then they're going to hang Christian Bale at the end too, because that's what people did back then. They hang people, right? Mm-hmm. But he escapes or something. He went down the trap door or something? I don't even know.
No, he was killed. They showed him falling through the trap door. I think he's dead.
I think I was checking baseball scores at that time.
I thought the ending was great. I think if you weren't paying attention, that's a you problem, man.
Yeah, definitely me a problem. That's for sure. Christian Bale deserved to be hung though, because he's a jerk in this movie, and I think that's another problem I had with this film overall. The male characters were all jerks. Like, even Michael Caine was a jerk. So was Scarlett Johansson. She cheated and stuff. The only one that wasn't a jerk was Christian Bale's wife, and she ends up getting hanging her.
Sorry, Scarlett Johansson didn't cheat on anybody. What are you talking about?
Well, yeah, because remember, she left the one guy and went with the other guy and was supposed to go and spy on him, and then she ends up having an affair with him and stuff.
Well, I mean, that's if that's how you interpret it, but I think it was pretty clear from the dialogue that she was actually falling for him. Like, again, there was this falling out with the other magician. So she's like, screw it. Mm-hmm. You want to treat me like the hired help? Then I'm just going to do my own thing. Yeah, no, I get all that. I don't know. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the tricks. So I actually like seeing some of the tricks. Like, I like how they use the magnet on the little rod that puts the shot into the gun. Yes.
So the shot doesn't stay on the gun. It comes out, and then the magician palms it. And then when the gun goes off, it's just a blank, and he pretends to catch it. So I also like how they described how that...
Sorry, the wife even says, "Oh, the trick's not even that exciting once you know," and because that's what he says to her, like, you don't want to know. No. You think you want to know, but you don't. You want to be fooled. Like, that's the whole point. It's great. I like how they were mentioning how that trick could go really, really bad because, like, a person could, because they give the gun to just a random person in the audience. They could put something into the gun, and then the magician actually gets shot, like a quarter or something like that. They were saying, and then when the scene when they showed how the bird and how it disappears and it actually gets crushed and dies. Like, I was like, geez. So I like that they pulled the curtain back on some of those things, but they didn't do it for the big act, the transported man, until the end. But I mean, come on. You knew he was using a twin. This wasn't like The Sixth Sense. Like, was it? Like, were you supposed to be like that hoodwinked? I'm like, he was using a twin the whole time. I'm like, how else would he have done it? It's 1900. Well, I guess the cloning machine. I don't know. But so I don't know. For me, I guess I wasn't really surprised by it. It was like, it was the most obvious thing. So I don't know. The first time I saw it, the fact that they kept denying it. Oh, no, it can't be. It can't be. It can't. Like, and I kept thinking to myself, if it's a twin, where's his double? Because you never saw a double through the whole movie. The fact that they chose to live their entire life where one of them was always disguised in the makeup, which they sort of, again, foreshadowed a little bit at the beginning when they were talking about the Asian guy with the goldfish trick, and they were like, figure out how to do that. and we'll talk. And
that was
like,
neat.
oh, he's got to be doing this.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, come on, he always walks like that. And they're like, he is so committed to this bit. And apparently that was based on a real guy who was an English person who pretended to be an Asian person for like 30 years to keep up with the pretense in order to be this performer. Like it's crazy the length some of these performers would go to solidify their excellence, even though it's through trickery and deception and that kind of thing.
I like that they didn't reveal that guy's stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. So, anything else you want to discuss about this movie, Derek?
No, I think we sort of danced around most of the things that I was wanted to talk about. I mean, again, I think I like a movie like this. Again, this is part of the reason I like Batman comics so much, because Batman's the detective. I like detective stories. I like where you as the audience and often the people in the movie are trying to solve a mystery, whether it's who did the murder or who stole the jewels, or in this case, how did he do the trick? Like these things, I always find these kinds of stories fascinating. But it almost always comes down to the reveal at the end. Like, do I feel that was a satisfying explanation, or was it just the Deus Ex Machina where it's like, and they waved their hand and everything was resolved, and you're like, come on, give me a break. I invested 2 hours and that's how you're going to end this stupid thing. Whereas with this one, I had a very satisfying, I had a very strong sense of satisfaction at the end. I felt that it paid, for me anyway, I felt it paid off. And like I said, when I watched it this second time, this was probably my second time through, maybe my third, knowing that he had the twin and looking for those little tells along the way, like I really got a little more out of it. I really enjoyed it more. And even when Hugh Jackman goes to visit Tesla and they show like all the hats, like at the very beginning of the movie, you see all the hats and it's like, without context, you don't know what that is. But then later on when he comes back and you're like, oh, he's been doing the experiment over and over and over again. And the new hats just keep duplicating out into the field. And it's like, oh yeah. So no, I really like this one. I enjoyed it. I'm a little disappointed you didn't like it as much. I know it's a little on the long side, and I know I suggested that you sit and watch it in one viewing. I should have also stipulated you got to put your phone in the other room, but nevertheless, we're here. I'm glad you're not giving it a solid F. That's
no. So do you want to rate it out of 10 for me?
Probably give it an 8.5.
Oh wow, that's pretty high. I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I figured you're probably a 5 or 6 based on how things were going.
It just was kind of my thing. So, all right, let's have some
fun with Caveman.
All right, my man, this week it's straight up trivia. But here's the thing. It all has to do with magic and pop culture.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's like tons of stuff here, okay? So, first question. Released on May the 7th, 1984, what song by the Cars reached number 1 on the Billboard Top Tracks chart?
It was either just called Magic or Oh, It's Magic. I'm just saying it's called Magic.
It was Magic. That's right. All right. What toy craze of the 1960s was featured in the 1973 film The Exorcist and had such an effect on audiences that sales for the toy actually plummeted for years?
Was it
after the film?
Was it like a Ouija board?
Regan used it to talk to Captain Howdy, if you remember. So it just creeped people out so nobody bought the thing anymore. Okay, who is the highest grossing magician in history?
Oh, it's got to be either it's got to be David Copperfield.
He has actually sold more tickets than any other entertainer to date, earning him over $4 billion and selling 33 million tickets. Wow.
Wasn't he married to a supermodel for a long time?
Yeah, Claudia Schiffer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In 1983, a little bit of a follow-up question here. In 1983, what landmark did David Copperfield make disappear on live television?
Oh, was it the Statue of Liberty?
Yes, it was. Very impressive, yeah. Although it wasn't nearly as impressive as when Marilyn Chambers made disappear in 1976.
Oh my.
That was a totally different magic trick. I'm being told that the censors are not very happy with
we
me
might be getting a bleep through that one.
It's not me. It's not Chris. It's the Nikola Tesla clone, really. Okay, 2-part Harry Potter question for you.
Okay.
What is the name of the creature guarding the trapdoor in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone?
Well, it's a three-headed dog. I think that they just called him Fluffy, didn't they?
Yes. And the follow-up question you already nailed. What type of creature was Fluffy?
He was like Cerebus, the three-headed dog from the Gates of Hell.
Yes. He was a giant three-headed dog. Very good. Okay, before finding success as the lead of an ensemble cast on a sitcom, this actor began his career as a magician, appearing on Saturday Night Live from 1981 to 1985, as well as a recurring guest role as a con man, Harry the Hat, on Cheers from 82 to 93.
Yeah. No, that was Harry Anderson.
Very good. Okay, this company was founded in an old warehouse in Van Nuys, California in 1975 for the sole purpose of creating effects for a single movie. It's since gone on to become the largest visual effects company in the world.
What year?
1975 it was formed.
Oh, it's got to be the Star Wars one, Industrial Light and Magic.
That's the one. Okay, what magician locked himself in a giant plexiglass box for 44 days, suspended 30 feet in the air over the Thames River in London, England?
Oh, I remember that too. That was... I don't remember, but I'm going to guess. Was it? It wasn't, but I'm guessing. Is it Chris Angel?
No, it's David Blaine.
Blaine.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love how Chris Rock called him out. He's like, he's a trickless magician. He's in a box. There's no trick. Okay, this American weekly comic strip first began appearing in newspapers on April the 19th, 1970, and featured a man-crazy, cigar-smoking, beer-guzzling, 1,500-year-old witch and her motley crew of friends.
The only one that's coming to mind is Hagar the Horrible.
It was similar people that were making it, but it was called Broomhilda.
Oh, yeah, no.
Broomhilda. Okay,
no clue.
A little bit of an easier one. In this 1985 comedy, two high school nerds use a computer program to magically create the perfect woman who promptly turns their lives upside down.
Oh, that was... I can picture the girl in the underwear. It was Weird Science.
Yes! She got almost all of them. He got them all, I think, except David Blaine and Broomhilda. They were tough ones, but anyway, so next time it's back to me to pick a movie for us to watch and review. Something interesting last week, I thought, Derek, on our 300th show. We were talking about how there's certain movies, certain topics that, maybe we should consider going back, doing over again. Mm-hmm. I'd like to put this to the test right away, my friend.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So after the events of the past weekend, Derek, I'd like to go back and watch and review the 1984 movie Revenge of the Nerds. I had Yancey watch this all the way back in season 1, but that show was all about how he'd never seen it, and I got his take on the movie as a millennial. Like, he had no formal attachment to it at all.
Right.
So this time, I'd like us to go back and go through this movie with a fine-tooth comb. As I'm sure there's a ton we could talk about. Yeah. So are you up for it, Revenge of the Nerds?
I mean, like you, that movie has fondness and fond place in my heart because I grew up watching it. I have not watched it in its entirety in one sitting, start to finish, in probably 15 to 20 years. I've seen bits and pieces. It's on TV occasionally and stuff. I'm really worried that it's one of those things where when I watch it again, I'm going to see so many problems with it that it's going to really ruin that memory. But you know what? The things we do for this show.
Exactly.
I will take it on. Now, do you know, is it readily available?
It is not. It is really, really, really hard to find. So if I'm not mistaken, you cannot get it on the streamers. You can't get it anywhere, but it is available on YouTube. So take a look on there and see if you can get it.
I think I own a copy on VHS, and now it's going to be a matter of, can I find the tape and can I find a working player?
Working VHS.
Not only that, but a player that will attach to any TV in my house. Because I just talked to someone about this the other day. They were saying how they were trying to find they found a VCR and they could not find any way to connect the VCR to any of the televisions in their house.
No, because we just have those like color plugs, the white and the red and the yellow.
Or the coax cable.
Yeah.
And they're like, yep. And they're like, you can't even buy adapters for some of those anymore.
Nope.
And I was like, holy crap. So, okay, I'll look through my my library and see if I can find a copy. If not, we'll pull it from YouTube. But
right, sounds like a deal. All right, so we're gonna watch Revenge of the Nerds and come back and review it next week. It should be interesting. Until then, I'm Chris McBrien. That's Derek Myers, and we both want to say thanks for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.